Welcome to Mom to More. I'm your host, Sharon Macey. Join me as I speak with interesting and dynamic women who have created their next act, their more, using the superpowers and skills they honed as stay-at-home moms. They have reinvented themselves and will share their skills, experiences, struggles, and successes, whether it was pursuing a passion, returning to their previous career, or charting an entirely new path, giving you the clarity and inspiration to help you answer the question, what do you want to do when your kids grow up? Hi, moms. Welcome to the debut episode of Mom to More. I'm excited to welcome my very first guest, visual artist, Ellen Friedlander. Hey, Ellen, it's so good to see you.
Really nice, Sharon, to be here.
Thank you. Well, Ellen is a Los Angeles-based artist who uses a variety of in-camera and post-processing techniques to reveal the unpredictable, idiosyncratic, inscrutable nature of the human condition. Ellen is co-director of Pasadena Photography Arts and has been featured in Lens Scratch, the LA Weekly, the Candid Frame podcast, and is a recurring guest curator on the Crit House podcast. In 2021, 3 of Ellen's photographs from her Trail series were shown at the Austin Desmond Fine Art in London. Her work is currently seen in several exhibitions across Southern California, including C. May Gallery, which showcases her extended frame photographs. So welcome, Ellen. Thank you for joining me. I'm so excited you're here.
Oh, it's a thrill. It's really lovely to be here, Sharon.
Thank you. Well, let's jump in. Okay, so essential mom question. How many kids do you have and where did you raise them?
Oh, I have 2 children. My son was born in Ocala, Florida. And when he was 18 months old, we had an opportunity and we moved to Hong Kong. And my daughter was born in Hong Kong and we spent 15 years there and then moved back to Southern California.
That's a long time, 15 years.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. Well, I should disclaimer that you and I met when our sons played on the same college tennis team. And I saw you on the court photographing the boys as they were playing. And I was wondering, had you done sports photography before, or was that your first time trying that?
Well, I've been a photographer my entire life. And when Skylar, his love of tennis, took us to the courts in Claremont, McKenna, I just couldn't bear watching him. So I decided that the only way that I would be able to handle all of that intense stress was to put my camera to work. And so I just started to shoot as much of the tournaments as possible and was given the opportunity to grow with my photography with Paul Settles and the Claremont team. It was wonderful. And
I have to admit, the photographs were incredible. And so we have some really extraordinary memories from our son's time at Claremont, thanks to your photographs. So I really appreciate that. So when did you really realize that being a photographer was your calling and your passion?
I actually thought it when I was 16 years old. And then again, when I was 21 and I was sitting in the senior thesis class and a famous photographer, Emmett Gowan, was showing his work. And it was just my journey. But I knew from the get-go that children and wanting to be a mom was one of my primary goals in life. It was just a need. So as much as I was passionate about having a career and being a photographer, so I've always been in and done on the side, when I chose, when I found David, my ex and such, and I chose to get married and have that intimate kind of experience in life, children were like everything to me, truly. So that's where my passion laid. But on the side, I was always photographing. So I've always been focused with having my children grow to the best of their ability. And at the same time, try to carve out a little piece of me, which, I understand as being a mom. I mean, we have this much bandwidth at times.
Exactly.
But even doing a little bit goes a long way. I guess that is the most important, one of the most important points today. Even the little bit of effort on a daily basis adds up over a long period of time.
100%. That's actually a really good point, Ellen, because I've also, did the stay-at-home mom thing for 20 years. And it's easy to lose yourself when you're being a stay-at-home mom. And sometimes it sounds so trite, to say, make sure you have time for you or enjoy all the moments you have with your kids. And that's hard. I mean, that's really hard to pull off. So I agree with what you said about just, even if you can carve out just a little time that is you time, whether it's picking up your camera or whether it's reading a book or listening to a podcast or something that allows you to keep who you are. So that is a really strong message. So
I want to add
yeah.
something to that.
Yes.
What you are when you're raising children, because I feel really strongly about raising children. I just thought it was the most magical job I could have ever had, and it never goes away. It's the most wonderful gift that we give humanity. I think that so everybody should give themselves a huge hug, because being a mom is great. And those women who don't have the opportunity to be a mom, but they're a mom to another child, a sibling, or somebody else's, that's just as special. Caring about humanity is everything we do. So I'm a complete advocate for staying at home or doing whatever you need to do to be with your children.
It is the toughest job you will ever love.
But the most rewarding. But what we're doing is we're actually raising beings. So it is, whether you're not getting paid for it, but you're getting paid for it because you get to raise this human. And what your reward is that they become this person that can function in society, contribute to society, give you back love. It's everything that you do is definitely worth the time and effort, and never should feel like you are losing yourself, because you're actually gaining yourself. That's
100%. 100%. That so often, as a stay-at-home mom, you do feel like you're losing who you are, you're losing your skill set, but the reality is you're not. You are gaining so much more. You're becoming so much more powerful and developing your superpowers. And it is really, looking at it from another perspective, it's a very empowering place to be, with all that you're doing for raising humans, the next generation, and what you are learning yourself as a human being, as a woman, which is so important.
Oh, it's vital. And everything we learn as a parent, what like I shifted onto myself as they were being launched. I took everything that I did for them, my passion, my love, and my focus. I then turned on myself, because I noticed that, well, it worked. So if it worked for raising children, it can certainly work.
It can work for you too.
For me.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I learned, and that's what I've worked on, is taking all the skill sets that I developed in getting to them where they needed to be in college or high school or different sports or different activities, or even now in their careers. I then turn upon myself.
And that's a really strong lesson. It's, that what we've put forth, with our children, that you've taken those exact same skills and then turn the camera on you, so to speak, turned it back around on you, which is really strong, because I think there's a lot of different ways for women to move on to their next step. As the kids are getting older, you find you've got a little more time during the day. And oftentimes, I know for me, I was always thinking, well, what do I want to do when I grow up? And it is a very powerful way to think about, having kids and raising kids. And moving forward with that.
And it's also really interesting to understand, because that the journey is always to reinvent oneself. And so even with my photography, I started out just inching my way into the field. And then every journey, every little, gradual upbeat, there's another expanse that I have to reinvent myself or lift myself up or figure out. So it's constantly growing. And I think, and also constantly reaching to other people around us. So communication, which I learned through my children, I use very much for myself as well. Same skills, I moved to the United States with my two children, and I had to figure out where to put them in high school, where to get my son into the best tennis program so that he could find his way into college. Well, I had to ask hundreds of people. And in the same way, when I moved to LA for myself, it was my curiosity and my persistence to ask people constantly, you know, in different places, curators, gallerists, artists, you know, how did you get here? What do you do? And that curiosity is how I've grown. You know, it's super interesting. Same skills.
Absolutely. And you have had an extraordinary journey. I mean, essentially, when you came back to the US with the kids and they were in high school, you were doing the single mom thing, you know, because you were separated by half the globe. And that was a lot. So you really did an extraordinary job in that regard. I want to hop back for a moment to Hong Kong, because you were there for so many years. And I'm curious, how did that city influence your work? And can you talk about your extended frame series and how that came about? Because I think that work is really extraordinary. And at the end of this podcast, we are going to have links in the show notes to your website so people can actually see your work.
Well, moving to Hong Kong was a overload of the sensory, you know, frontal lobe. I had never lived in a city of that kind of voracious speed. It moves, buildings go up, buildings come down. It's a completely international city. And I was hungry for that. So in 24 hours, I looked at David and David looked at, and we were like, I was like, this is fabulous. So from the get-go, I thought it was fascinating. The cultures, I'm from a tiny little town in upstate New York. Even though I've moved around the United States, nothing prepared me for all the different cultures that all of a sudden I was being, at any given moment, I was
exposed to. Yeah.
Exposed to, exactly. And I was left alone because David's career took him most of the time that first year, you know, traveling. So I was literally alone with a new baby. He was 18 months old in a new country. Oh my God, it was beyond comprehension. Camera, definitely. I photographed everything and worked at making new friends in a place that I didn't know anyone. Flash forward, I met a photographer in my early days there, and I worked with him for 10 years. So keeping my skill sets alive at the same time as raising my son and then having a second child there, all that started to integrate. And then I would just take my camera everywhere and photograph. I was still honing my skills while I was raising my children in Hong Kong. I hit a few high notes. People saw my work. They were interested. I did do some private commission work, but I really focused on my children. It was a really full-time job.
Oh, it is a full-time job. Yeah.
It's a full-time job.
Being a stay-at-home mom? Absolutely. Yeah.
Full-time job. And so when people came to me and said, I had a friend who ran a fashion magazine who right now I have work coming out in, she asked me, and I think it was 2001, could you work for the magazine? And I said, no. I said, I just can't. I know what I would need to do for you and what I need to do for my children. I can't do it all. So I feel really good about that decision, even today. The extended frame happened when I went back to Hong Kong after leaving in 2010. The children and I were back in the United States to help my son find his place for school in Hong Kong, in the United States, for college tennis. I went back in 2014, spent a month there. Due to the challenges of living abroad and coming back and forth, my marriage was kind of, things were a little shaky. And so I spent a lot of time on the street in that month in Hong Kong and came back with 4,000 photographs. And
That's
that
incredible.
work, yeah, that work came back in 2014. This shows you the patience one needs for oneself. 2014, I made those photographs. 2017 is when I started to explore that work. So 3 years, that work was sitting in my Lightroom catalog. I'd looked at it. I knew I'd made a few gems, but I didn't really know what to do with it. And in the meantime, my focus was on the children, because there were things that were really important for me to make sure that they were getting in the right schools, getting to the right tournaments, all that stuff that was very, very important at that time. So I was very much a mom. 2017, my son was a freshman in college. My daughter was approaching, she was in high school and she was in a good place. I started to work. Oh, I think I'm a little misguided there. My daughter was starting to go to college and my son was out of college. And so I was about to launch myself, and I worked for 6 months with a photographer who helped me find my voice. And I think it's really important to note the amount of discipline and courage to give yourself that space, because most of the time, that 6 months, I was really struggling to feel good about what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. There was I was alone. I really didn't have a community, didn't have peers at the time, didn't have friends in the little city I was living outside of LA. And yet that focus, the passion, the drive for something was what helped me find the extended frame.
And you said a couple of words that I've just been jotting down: patience, finding your voice, and having the courage to step out of your comfort zone. And this is a great lesson for any mom who is sort of going through that. The kids are getting older and, they're leaving the nest, taking that time for yourself because you deserve it, and figuring out, what it is, what is your next act going to be, and finding your voice and finding your passion. And it doesn't have to be going back to work. It's like your art is a passion for you. Your photography is a passion for you. And I think, as a woman and being fulfilled, having that moment where you feel fulfilled and energized, that is actually something that you work for. And you said that in such a beautiful way. So, having the patience to find your voice, having the courage to go for it, and just sort of take a leap of faith because you believe in yourself, and then just make that jump.
So there's a couple. So Twyla Tharp has The Creative Habit. It's a book that I picked up, years ago. And what she lays out in there, it's just like every day, do something, and just get in a habit of every day. So if you like to cook, every day, pick a recipe, or pick, just even cookbooks or a chef, and just every day do 20 minutes, and 20 minutes then turns into an hour, and an hour turns into 3 hours. And just so that you block out time to focus, because it's really all about every day doing what you love. So
yes.
My love happens to be photography and the medium around that work. But there's so many different ways one can exude your passion. There's just a multitude of ways.
100%. And actually, that's something that I went back to. I started going back and doing Latin ballroom dancing about 6 years ago. And now I compete in Latin ballroom dancing in the Pro-Am category. And I'm actually a national champion, shockingly, in my level and my age category. So you start off slow and you're like, okay, I'll cook a recipe. I'll continue making photographs. I will take a dance class. And there's so many venues for women to, like you said, find your voice and just find something that really fulfills your soul. And I think that's a huge lesson for women as we, get older and we've spent so much time focusing on the kids that it's easy to lose yourself.
Well, we also can't listen to people. When I came to LA and I, being an artist in at 60, whatever, it's kind of ridiculous. And I was like, well, why not?
It's not ridiculous.
It's not, nothing is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I just didn't listen. I didn't know what that meant, but there is a lot of work. So you have to be prepared to be lonely. You have to be prepared to be scared. You have to be prepared to be, in turn, fearless, and in turn, get really angry at somebody saying you can't do something. And by turning that,
It's like, oh yeah, watch me.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
'Cause I had people say, you're just a stay-at-home mom. What are you trying to do? I was like, and the
But I am so much
fumes,
more. Yeah.
right? The fumes kind of flew out of me. I'm like, well, I'll show you, basically. And, it doesn't really matter, actually, whether you attain whatever success is, because I don't really think that it should be about a certain thing. It's all about you. Whatever it is that makes you tick should be enough. That's it. For me, finding community, and having people that I can talk to about my work, and then now having the work get out into the world and be part of a conversation, that's a dream. That's truly a dream. It's a miracle. But again, it's constant work and constant reinventing. So the most important thing is for us to all understand that we have to constantly keep growing and asking for help. In the beginning, I was absolutely terrified of social media, of Facebook.
Weren't we all?
Yeah, so terrified.
Yeah.
Yet it can become our friend. And at a certain point, you learn how we're all the same. We're all the same. And once we figure out that we're all on this journey together, and we work together, and we greet each other in that space of love and acceptability, we can do anything, right?
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. And that is so true. You had, when I was looking at your website, you had said a couple of lines that really struck me. And I just wanted to shout them out to you and get your response to that. It was something you said regarding your extended frame series. You said, valuing the quality of spontaneity while subjecting it to disorder. And I thought, oh my God, that sounds like the everyday life of a mom. So I'd be curious to explain sort of what that means and how that relates to your work.
Well, I'm incredibly spontaneous. There are different ways that people work. Some people are incredibly methodical, and it's just like order. I'm more of a like a whirlwind of spontaneity. And in that is my discipline. So when I look at the world and I frame something, it happens in an instant. And so it's all about taking all that I see in that absolutely, nanosecond of a moment, but it's then ordered because of my formal elements of a photographer and learning how to see, then everything takes shape. And so it's that magic moment of both the absolute cacophony, right, of craziness, and putting it together in that moment, but then it's got order. So it's a balance. So that's what I would say. That's what my extended frame feels like. And it's a puzzle, just like life.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. And I hope the listeners will go and look at your extended frame work, because it is so thought-provoking and powerful and real and gritty. And it really just has so much strength to it. It's really an incredible series.
Thank you.
So the theme of your Pasadena Photography Arts Forum was breaking through personal doubt to find your voice, which again, another incredible concept for moms. And I think we might have already touched upon it, but briefly, how did you push through your personal doubts and find your voice?
Oh, very important to prepare to be lonely, and not in a bad way, but one can't find one's voice without sitting still, and sitting still in those moments that are awkward, sometimes painful, sometimes sad. All those emotions, though, are actually rich, okay? They're rich, they're powerful, they're incredibly useful, because they bring about empathy and kindness, and they bring about just an overall sense of connectivity to people. And so I sat with that, and that's when my creative flow actually started to bubble up, and I started to listen, and I started to just be with it. And so I think that we sometimes overthink ourselves. And so, but when I'm overcome with an emotion, my first impulse is to pick up my camera. And so, and I've gotten to the point where when I pick up my camera, I don't judge myself. And that's another important point. Don't judge yourself.
That's a really strong point, because I feel like, and I think I'm guilty of that as well. So many women feel like, well, what is the world expecting of me versus what do I expect from the world?
Yeah. No judgment, and no judgment.
No judgment zone. Yeah.
No judgment. Just do it. And by not judging oneself and by putting it out there, all of a sudden the vulnerability, the authenticity of oneself, you learn about you. And when you learn about you, again, I'm just going to go back, it connects us to everybody else, because our most basic being, well, we're all the same. So, and that's love. We all want to be loved. We all want community. We all want to be seen. We all want to be heard. These are all really basic things. And by sharing our own creative outlooks, that's how we connect. So finding my voice, that's how I found my voice. Oh, it was ugly. I mean, it was terribly painful, sitting there with myself, truly. And I would say that if anybody wanted to contact me personally and help them through something like that, I'm accessible, because I really, really, really believe in the process. I really believe in thinking and being and sitting in one's own skin and finding that creative flow. Everybody has it in one, like you found it with ballroom dancing.
Absolutely. And I think when you're in the moment, dancing would be the same when you're in the moment creating your photographs. There's just that nothing else is around, and it's just you and what you're doing. And that's incredibly powerful. And it's also incredibly valuable for your sanity, as a woman, as a mom. So I think all of that. And I love the phrase creative flow, because it could be across it has wide ranging possibilities. So I really love that.
Very important, non-judgmental, let that creative flow go. And sometimes it takes years to see the results. So years is a positive experience, okay? Nothing happens overnight. One of the things I've been most excited about in the photography world is meeting people who have had 40 years working on one project. It's like a child, right?
Yeah.
Same idea. Working on it, growing a human, well, working on your craft. That's the gem of it all. It's not the overnight success. The overnight success is the person who's worked at something for 40 to 50 to 60 years.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Success. The overnight, all of a sudden, or an actor who's had 40 years of experience behind them, and suddenly they're an overnight success, but hardly at all. So really what I'm getting from some of this, our conversation, is that you are really so much more than just a mom. You are in training for future you. You are doing everything daily, whether you realize it or not, that is setting you up for what you're going to be in the future. Right. And that concept is really interesting. It's like, what if everything that you do as a mom, everything is setting you up for future you and giving you those skills and the confidence and the love and the courage and the patience, to be future you.
Everything we do is the journey that we're going for. I've always told my children that at any moment people get off the train. Okay. And they stop growing. The goal in life is to not get off that train. It's to stay on the train, to keep exploring, to keep growing, to keep stretching. And that's what keeps us fresh. That's what keeps us alive. That's what keeps us connected. It's powerful to be a woman.
Absolutely. Excuse me. Absolutely, it is. So I want to ask you a question. sort of to start to wrap things up and say, okay, so since this is Mom to More, I'd like to ask Ellen Friedlander, visual artist, what is your more?
So I'm very curious. Curiosity is a key ingredient to my more. Community, ever burgeoning, widening community, growth-minded, keep my mind expanding.
Very
and
important.
Most important is unwavering positivity.
And you have that. You absolutely have that.
Yeah. A positive attitude, even on a down day, eking out, even in that down day, does make a difference.
I will say amen to that. That is incredibly strong. Do you have any books that you love and that you would like to reference that you think would be positive for other moms?
3 right here.
Okay.
I've got, we got Brene Brown, we got Elizabeth Gilbert, and this, I love this guy, is Richard Templer. I found his books eons ago in Hong Kong, and he has rules of life, rules of love, your rules of work, simple 1-page little things that kind of go, it's perfect to open up and go, of course, that just makes so much sense. And I also love Twyla Tharp, The Creative Habit. That's a great book for anybody to kind of get into the mindset of, oh, this is how I get myself oriented towards every day working towards a bigger me.
Fantastic. That is fantastic. I would also like to ask you, as we wind this up, are there any other, you've had so many gems, so you may have nothing else to say, but are there any sort of final words you would like to offer up to a mom, as she's beginning this transition?
What you're trying to do is wonderful, because, women, young women, just, they get, I mean, and this is good for people who are moms, because our society is just rough. I mean, America is rough on people. I mean, it's just, we don't have extended families anymore. I mean, some cultures still do, but most of us don't. And so you're just hung out to dry. It's super lonely.
I can appreciate that.
It's really about inspiring other moms.
Yeah.
That's the goal here. It's really about inspiring other women to understand that we can do this, right?
Yeah. I hope there's, and especially I think as women get older, and I suffered from this too, you're like, I'm irrelevant. I've lost my skill set. My industry has changed. So I know for me, I actually went back to school to bring my 20th century advertising and marketing skills into the 21st century. And I think that's just so valuable, to be able to take that time for you. And of course, having that first freak out moment when I was supposed to submit something and everything was online and I was having trouble doing it. And you get the red line, the red flashing thing that comes up. There's like late. But after that, my bad dreams went away and it was terrific. But these were wonderful, wonderful inspirations. You are an inspirational woman. You have done incredible work. And I, value our friendship. I value the time that we have spent together and what you are putting out in the world. You're really bearing your soul and putting it all out in the world. And I think that's beautiful. So thank you for that. So please tell everybody where we can find you online and where we can find you on social media.
Well, my Instagram is EMFphoto59. My website is ellenfriedlanderphotography.com. And Pasadena Photography Arts, if you're a photographer out there or anybody interested in photography, we do open show and forums. You're welcome to join. They're online. And I think that's me.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode of Mom to More, be sure to follow us, leave a review, and share this podcast with other moms.